Hello, my friends. Mrs. Surratt here to talk to you about World War I, also called the Great War. Not because war is so awesome and so great, but because this was the largest war of its kind. You'll notice it's called World War, even though not everybody was involved. This is a huge war. It's grand in its scope. It encompasses multiple countries. And so that's why it's often referred to as a world war or a great war, referring to the size of it. So let's get right into it here. The World War I was fought from July 28, 1914 to November 11, 1918, so approximately 4 years. And you'll notice that November 11th often on calendars shows up as Armistice Day or VE Day. That has to do with the fact that we're still celebrating the end of that war or remembering those soldiers and sacrifices. Nearly 8 million people died, guys, and Russia lost almost a quarter of those people. They took one of the hardest hits. A lot of fighting did happen near Russia, and almost 22 million were wounded. Some were wounded, some were injured by illness or other things that we're going to talk about. But this war was huge. The number of people to be injured or killed in this war is amazing. Nothing up to this point had ever been seen like it. Now, the map of Europe has greatly changed, and let's take a look at that. This is Europe before World War I. You'll see my little circle here. Of course, all of this is Europe, but I want to focus on this little circle. You'll see Germany here, Austria-Hungary, Russia. That's kind of about it. Here's Serbia down here. You don't have a whole lot of different countries, but after the war, take a look at all of these colors of the rainbow that suddenly show up. Germany loses some land to Poland. Austria-Hungary gets the worst beaten up. They become Czechoslovakia. Austria and Hungary are teeny tiny little countries here. So you end up with a big change after this war. These countries up here show up: Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. So major changes happen after World War I. Now, there's considered to be four main causes of World War I: nationalism, imperialism or rivalry over colonies, the alliances, and militarism, also called the arms race. And I want to address each one for just a moment. Nationalism, there was a lot of growing love for for your country that was going on at this time. It was very fashionable to talk about how much you loved your country. Not just fashionable, I mean, people really felt it. They loved their country. They wanted to see it grow. They wanted to see it expand and to become the best in the world. And that kind of goes along with imperialism or rivalry over colonies. Remember, colonies give you raw materials, they give you a place to trade, they give you kind of prestige. We have, 50 colonies. Oh, what, you only have two? We're so much better than you. So there's this kind of wrapped up together, this need to expand, this need to control more. And then you have the alliance system, which I'd like to talk about in a moment. But if you think about it, alliances are something people often do when they feel kind of nervous or uncomfortable. What was going on at this time leading up to World War I, there was a lot of tension between the countries. People were kind of uncertain. What are you doing over there? Are you going to attack me? What's going on? And of course, there's new technology, which I'll get to here for a moment in the militarism, that's making people kind of eyeing their neighbors. So what happens is countries think, oh, well, if I have a friend, then I'll appear stronger and people won't attack me. I mean, think about it. If a bully comes up to me on the playground to beat me up, but that bully realizes that I'm friends with the biggest kid in the room, and that if he tries to beat me up, I'm going to have a friend come over, and now it's 2 against 1, chances are good he's going to walk away and leave me alone, right? So that's kind of what happened, and we'll get into that in a moment. But the other thing going on was people were building their military, their army, their navy. They were building up the arms that they had. Oh, you guys got some guns? Well, okay, we better get some more guns. And oh, they've got some guns. Well, maybe we better get bombs. Oh, they got bombs. Maybe we better turn around and get cannons. So everybody's just kind of building themselves up under the theory that you feel more secure. If you have 10 guns in your house, you might feel more secure than if you have one or none. But it's kind of a false sense of security, because oftentimes what happens is when someone has a huge amount of weapons, other people start to sort of feel like, well, they're going to attack, so maybe I should attack first. So you do kind of see that backfire. So the alliance system, as I mentioned, here we have the Triple Entente, which is composed of Britain, France, and Russia. And then we have the Triple Alliance composed of Ottoman Empire, Germany, and Austria-Hungary. And, again, like I mentioned, Austria-Hungary's getting nervous. They and Germany decide to get together. Well, Britain and France kind of feel like, oh, well, if you guys are getting together, we'd better get together. And they keep inviting groups in with the idea that whoever has the bigger number of people or the bigger powerful countries on their side, it's kind of like you won't attack me because I'm too intimidating. That's kind of the idea of what was going on. So as I mentioned, France, Great Britain, also known as United Kingdom, and Russia are one group. And then of course you have the Germany, Austria-Hungary, and down here you have the Ottoman Empire, which is sometimes called Turkey. So these six are really kind of the big countries. Now, of course, in the Allies, you have Italy, who's like, well, I guess if I have to, I'll get involved. Romania, same sort of thing. And you also have Serbia, who I've noted here. I want to talk about Serbia in a moment because that's kind of where everything gets going. But you also have these countries, Spain, Switzerland, Belgium. They kind of want to stay out of it. They're like, look, you guys want to fight, go ahead and fight, but we're going to be out of here, which is sort of hard. Some countries are able to stay out of it, but then you've got places like poor Switzerland and Belgium that's right between some of the major countries that are going to have a tough time staying out of it. Well, let's talk about the spark that lit the fuse. And let me show you here on this map. Down here, I'm going to talk about this area right here, which is called the powder keg of Europe. This is an area with a lot of ethnic rivalries, a lot of political and economic rivalries. So this is kind of an area, and even though you've only got a few countries listed here, you've got so many more ethnic groups than you can possibly imagine. I mean, there was tons of them. And, many of them were not allowed a say in the government. So the Bosnians, the Serbians, they're the big ones, but like the Croats, they weren't really allowed to speak up. So there's a lot of tension in here. And this area is known as the Balkans. It's the Balkan Peninsula. And the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, he was from Austria-Hungary. He comes down here to visit Serbia, kind of remind everybody who's in charge, we're the big guys, but also to kind of just check the area out. And while he's there, he's assassinated by a Serbian nationalist group called the Black Hand. They wanted Serbia to be its own country, to be on its own. And this really, of course, this is shocking, but it's also very angering. So, as I mentioned here before, here's why it's called the powder keg with all the rivalries. The Archduke Franz Ferdinand is shot by the Serbian nationalists. And here's the thing, Serbia is this little bitty country over here. Austria-Hungary's this great big country. So Austria-Hungary's like, well, this isn't going to be much of a war. I mean, you guys don't have much. But Serbia, as I mentioned before, is in alliance with a good friend named Russia. And so Serbia says, Russia, help! You promised to help us! And Russia says, yeah, okay, of course, we'll get involved. Well, now, if Russia declares war on Austria-Hungary, guess what? Germany is bound by its alliance to declare war on Russia, which means France and Britain are bound by their alliance to declare war on Germany and Austria-Hungary, and of course the Ottoman Empire is bound by its alliance to get involved. Suddenly, guys, we've gone from a war between a little country and a big country to a war encompassing multiple large countries. That's why we call it a world war. Now, trench warfare is a big part of this war. And people sometimes say it's the first time this kind of warfare was used in war. I would argue it's not technically. In the Civil War, you did find some trenches, but no war ever used trench warfare the way that World War I did. And that's why oftentimes it's said to be the first type, because as you can see, what you do is you dig out a hole, and that hole is a trench. It's got parts on either side to protect you. You can hide down here. You can kind of hang over the top and shoot people. It goes on. It's some places were miles and miles of trench. It provides you more safety, so you're not standing up on the land so somebody can shoot you. It keeps you down and kind of hidden and protects you. And of course, they have these hats on, or helmets, excuse me, which will keep the bullet from going through. So this is the thing about trench warfare is once you dig your trenches, where are you going to go? You're not going to get out of your trench, because if you get out of your trench, your enemy who's in the trench is going to shoot you. So basically, a lot of trench warfare was just spent waiting for the fighting to start. People kind of dug themselves out these little tunnels, and they would hide in here and just sort of hang out. This is where you would sleep. Someone would be watching, and you'd be taking shifts. But guys, if a bomb comes into this area, it's going to explode, and anybody who's in this area is going to get hurt. So there was a lot of bombing in this war, back and forth. Um, Also, you've got, what if it rains? You know, you're thinking about, right, I don't know about you, but right now I'm almost wondering if I should build an ark looking outside. If it rains heavily in here, well, that water is just going to sit there. It has nowhere to go, nowhere to drain, which means your boots are going to be constantly wet. So one of the big things they battled in this war was called trench foot, which was basically athlete's foot, that people were having trouble with the uh, the war. Sorry. Well, how about the United States? Where was the US? Why weren't they involved? Well, the thing is, when this war began, the United States was like, oh, okay, I don't know what you guys are doing, but you're over there and we're over here, and we don't know what's going on between you. So this really isn't our fight. So Europe, they felt, was kind of like far away. War was really expensive. They said, let's just stay out of it. At the very least, let's be neutral. We're not going to offend anybody because, of course, remember, we traded with both Germany and Great Britain, who are on opposite sides of this war. So we don't want to break our ties with either group. We want to continue this trade back and forth. But as you may know, the United States does get involved. And there's really two major things to talk about. One is the sinking of the Lusitania, which is a British passenger ship that was coming from Ireland in 1915. And in that channel by Great Britain, the Germans had unrestricted submarine warfare going on. They were shooting at any boats that they found, including the United States boats. Now, they weren't doing it on purpose, like they didn't want the United States to come in, but they were kind of realizing that the more we shoot at those boats, the more we're going to make the United States mad. So they actually sent something called the Zimmermann telegram, which was from a minister in Germany named Zimmermann. And they send it to Mexico, and the United States intercepts this telegram. And basically, the letter says to Mexico, if the United States attacks Germany, would you please come in and be our ally and attack the United States? Now, the United States gets this before Mexico concedes it and says, whoa, wait a minute, we're not even talking about getting in war, and you're already talking about finding someone to attack us? I don't think so. Not to mention, wait till you see what the Zimmermann telegram was going to give Mexico. I'll show you in a moment. So here's the sinking. Here's the Lusitania before it was sunk. More than 128 Americans were on board. So a lot of people died. This really made the United States mad. Here's a picture of it sinking. And we've got an election going on right now between the Democratic President Woodrow Wilson and the Republican candidate, Supreme Court Justice Charles Evan Hughes. And Wilson is trying to campaign on the slogan, he kept us out of war, but he kind of knows war's coming. Meanwhile, Hughes is challenging Wilson by saying, oh, he's afraid to stand up to the Germans. So if you pick me, I will stand up to the Germans. And people are still like, I don't know if we're quite ready for war. They don't elect Hughes, but this does kind of let Wilson know that the people are kind of starting to side with the idea of war. So the United States is facing unrestricted submarine warfare, and they go to Germany and they're like, look, let's make a peace between equals. Let's everybody just relax. But Kaiser Wilhelm of Germany says, hey, any boats in British waters, doesn't matter whose it is, we will sink with our U-boats. And Zimmermann, meanwhile, the Zimmermann note, of course, we see this and we're like, whoa, you're asking Mexico to declare war on us? And so once 4 unarmed American merchant ships are sunk, this really is kind of the end of our being neutral. But the thing is, we kind of had a problem with Russia because Russia was a monarchy and we weren't. But remember the Russian Revolution, now Russia has a representative government. And the United States is like, okay, we can be involved because it's democracy versus monarchy. So the United States gets involved in World War I. And here's the Zimmermann letter, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but you'll notice that it does talk about Mexico reconquering its lost territory in New Mexico, Texas, and Arizona. That makes the United States pretty mad. Germany's offering to give them land that we own. And of course, here's Wilson asking Congress to declare war, and it's his works actually say there will be no material compensation. We freely make these sacrifices to join in the war. So the United States now gets involved in World War I, and we will talk some more about some of the effects of what happens afterwards. But you can see this war once the United States comes in, they kind of come in towards the end, so it's like everybody's exhausted and they're the fresh players. That really turns the tide, and it does help the Triple Entente to win the war. All right, my friends, we shall talk about this more in the next section. See you there.